Hello everyone, today I'm going to be doing a video on the nuclear war tensions in the 1980s and the British public's reactions to them. I'm going to be doing it more like about the British public's reactions because I'm more interested in the people and how they kind of lived alongside this like impending fear than I am about the Cold War. And I'm not going to go into much detail at all about the Cold War because I'm sure you already know everything there is to know about it. But yeah, ignore my hair. I'm trying to grow a mullet, so it's not looking too great at the minute. So we'll just allow it. But just a quick rundown anyway. After World War II, the USSR and the United States were just head to head with everything. Competitive, very competitive. They just constantly bickering, fighting in any way but physical. It was more like they was competing to be the best at things like sport, science, music, art, culture, innovation, all stuff like that. So it was a very tense atmosphere. So then Britain allied with the US because we're the democratic West and we were scared that Russia or the Soviet Union was gonna take some of the countries from the British Empire and turn it communist. So that's why we allied with the US. We also do obviously have like a lot of ties with the US, seeing as, you know, they helped us in World War II and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's kind of a given that we would, you know, ally with them. So the East and the West came to a conclusion, and that was with a thing called MAD. MAD stands for Mutually Assured Destruction, which basically means we can point as many nukes as we want at each other, but if one of them goes off, then the rest of them go off. It would be suicide basically, so no one wants to do it. It acted as a deterrent. However, the idea of it being a deterrent was disputed and heavily disagreed with by the CND, which was the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. They thought it was best to get rid of all nukes, all weapons of mass destruction, chuck them in the bin. We don't want them. Let's be free of all of this and not get involved, basically. Now, the CND was formed in the 50s, in 1957, and it was during the fear in the 50s of nuclear war and also heavily opposed nuclear testing. And I didn't know this, but the peace symbol, as we know it, is the symbol that was created for CND. So obviously the circle with the, like, basically like the Mercedes logo, that's the best way I can describe it. Supporters of CND generally tended to be left wing or centre. Apparently 3/4 of all supporters were actually Labour voters. In the 50s, however, the CND was criticised for, as Wikipedia says, essentially that of middle class radicalism. However, the revival of CND in the 1980s had people from all different walks of life, and I think that's probably just because it was a bit more like the tensions were a bit higher. So the MAD supporters versus the CND, this caused a lot of discourse and divide in Britain, with half of the British public agreeing with MAD and the other half marching alongside CND. CND did set up many protests all across Britain, and they had a very high attendance. About 250,000 people would attend their marches, or 300,000 people. So it was a very supported cause. So it obviously did cause a lot of divide. It was getting more and more popular and more people were joining because of all the things that was being shown on the telly, all of the things, the fear that was being put out there all the time, the leaflets and the what to do if there's a nuclear war, all of that stuff. people just thought like, oh shit, like we need to get rid of our bombs, we need to be like bomb free and stay out of it. So that's probably why a lot of people joined the CND. So I've spoken to my granddad a lot about this because obviously he was around back then. He was part of the CND. He went on the marches with them. And he's told me a lot about what the British public were like, just the general kind of feeling and atmosphere that was around, like in them days. He told me that people that were quite like switched on and not more knowledgeable, but yeah, just more switched on, more aware of like the things going on around them, more thinking about things more like logically rather than ignorance is bliss. They were very aware of the destruction and the complete annihilation of the country that nuclear war would cause. But obviously there's a lot of people who didn't really understand it. From my research, it was kind of more people in cities that knew that they were going to be dead, but because there was a chance that people, say in the countryside, would survive, they kind of had it in their heads that they would survive for the rest of their lives and they'd live a normal, happy life. But a lot of the British public did know that death was pretty much guaranteed in most places. I've also heard a lot about the 4-minute warning, which is the air raid siren, also like the British emergency alert alarm. And my granddad told me it was really scary the first time it went off as a drill, but after that they just got used to it and they just kind of got on with it. And to be honest with you, I think I would rather not know what was going to happen and thinking that this 4-minute warning is a drill and just getting on with my day and doing my daily normal tasks and not realising that I'm about to die, because them last 4 minutes would just be the worst. I don't even want to sit through 4 minutes of that, so of the worry. So I think it's good that, you know, people just got so used to the alarm that if it went off, people probably wouldn't really know what was going to happen. But yeah, I'd rather not know that there was 4 minutes to impending doom. Editing Molly, hello. I know obviously it would be on the radio and on the news and on the telly and all of that shit, but I don't know, obviously it would just be nicer just to not know that it's happening, but you probably would. I don't think that point that I made was very good, but I'm going to keep it in there anyway. But obviously, as I said, like during this time, this was a major topic on the telly. There was debates. It was constantly being spoken about. So in the 80s, there was a campaign called Protect and Survive. They sold leaflets, but the infamous public information films weren't actually aired on TV as, you know, it was for if a bomb was coming. However, they did get leaked to Panorama, which is a British investigative documentary kind of thing that's still running today. And they showed excerpts of it on the programme. These films discussed what you have to do when there is a nuclear bomb impending. So these videos, oh my god, they are horrifying. They are literally the scariest things I've ever seen, and I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot in this video, but literally horrific. There was a Channel 4 like countdown thing called the 100 Greatest Scary Moments, and it was aired in like 2003, and Protect and Survive was number 89, which is wild to me because Snow White is further down. I'm like, that should be at least in the top 20. It's horrifying. But the narrator, he went on this to do a little like interview about it, I'll put a clip in now.
I said, what's all this all about? And they said, well, they've got to have this standing by in case an atomic war starts. One sort of said, oh, don't be silly, you know. That was the most frightening thing. I was the last voice that they will ever hear. I mean, the responsibility of it was terrifying.
So the narrator, Patrick Allen, he just does this so well. It was not even intended to be scary. It's just got to be like calm and collected. But because it is so calm and collected with the things that he is talking about, it just makes it horrifying. It's eerie, like his voice is eerie, bless him. He seems like a lovely man. I don't want to offend him by saying his voice is eerie, but it is literally terrifying. And along with that, there's the most terrifying 5 seconds in music history. That little like jingle that plays. What the fuck? I hate it. And I will add that here. So it kicks off by talking about the signals. So attack, fallout, and then all clear. So there's 3 different signals for 3 different things. Obviously, it advises you don't leave the house during these signals. It then goes on to tell you about how to make the perfect fallout room. The room you have to pick it should be in the middle of the house or the flat. So you've got an outside wall, a room, the middle room, another room here, and the outside wall. So it should be furthest away from the outside walls. I'll put a clip in here to explain it better than I can.
You must now choose a room in your home which will give the best protection from fallout. If you live in a house, the safest place is the ground floor or basement. Choose a room with the smallest amount of outside wall. The farther you are from outside walls and the roof, the better the protection.
It also tells you if you live in a flat, you can't be in the top 2 floors if it's over 5 stories. So you have to basically evacuate and maybe go move into the landing. It then gives you instructions on how to build a fallout shelter. So it's the infamous doors up against the walls, bolted into the floor, with all the things you can find, mattresses, suitcases, bags of clothes, all just shoved on top of it to make it as heavy and as covered as possible. I'll add in pictures here to kind of show you what I mean, because I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. And there's also another one with 2 tables that you can just put next to each other and then put all the stuff on top and around it. So you'll be staying in your fallout room for 14 days. So for these 14 days, you've got to stockpile all the tinned food that you can possibly find, tin openers, 2 pints of water per person per day. So that means, I think I wrote it down, 3.5 gallons of water per person for 2 weeks. It also says to get special food for babies and invalids. I'm using that word because that's what they said in the films. I don't think that word would be used today, but as I said, I just said it because it was in the films. The creepy thing is that it said you can live for a very long time without food as long as you drink 2 pints of water a day. And that freaked me out. I don't know why that freaked me out. It's just the dystopianness of it, like telling the British public that you can live really long without food if you just drink 2 pints of water a day. That's scary. Obviously, it also said to get newspapers to read because you're going to be stuck in a room with your family for 2 weeks. If I was stuck in a room with my family for 2 weeks, just a newspaper to keep me sane, I don't know what I'd do, because I would not be sane. Bless them, but I don't think I could do that. It also recommends that you have a calendar so you can mark off the days. Plenty of batteries for the radio, torches, all sorts of stuff just to keep you busy basically. And loads of different like tools and stuff. Obviously I'll link it like in the description so you can watch the whole thing, because there's a lot. Like, I went through it and there is a lot of advice given which I can't put all in this video. So then it's about 20 episodes long, and 19 episodes go by, and they're pretty much just repeating stuff like over and over again, you know, like the same sort of things about the fallout room, what sort of stuff you need, about the toilet, and bring a bucket and put it in a little bag, plastic bag in a bucket, because you can't use the toilet, because you can't turn the water on, you can't turn the gas on, you can't do all this stuff. It just repeats it for 19 episodes. And then the last episode, all of a sudden, if one of your family members is dead, wrap them up and put them in a separate room, label them with obviously their names, and if nobody comes to collect it or help within 5 days, bury them in the garden. I will put that clip here because me explaining it isn't nearly as disturbing as actually seeing it.
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house. Label the body with name and address, and cover it as tightly as possible in polythene, paper, sheets, or blankets. Tie a second card to the covering. The radio will advise you what to do about taking the body away for burial. If, however, you have had a body in the house for more than 5 days, and if it is safe to go outside, then you should bury the body for the time being in a trench or cover it with earth and mark the spot of the burial.
I just find that horrific. I just think, like, because obviously if this was to happen, you bury them in the garden, that's just going to be their resting place forever. They don't get to be in a graveyard where they're around everybody else that's died. They don't get to be cremated. They're going to be in the garden, because that will just be it for the UK. Like, we'll be fucked. But yeah, that's Protect and Survive. That is just, I watched the whole thing. I watched all like 50 minutes, and it is one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen in my life. Because it's real as well, because it's literally real. That was going to be shown on the telly if there was a nuclear war. It blows my mind. So another thing that was shown on the telly was a documentary that came from the series Q.E.D. The title of this episode was A Guide to Armageddon, and it was written and directed by Mick Jackson, who directed Fred, which I will talk about later. So this documentary demonstrates the effects of a 1 megaton nuclear bomb dropping over London. Oh, I forgot to say that it said that this documentary is what inspired Mick Jackson to make Fred's. And you can very much tell it's a Mick Jackson special. I really enjoyed this documentary. I thought it was really well done. It was really well put together. It was very matter of fact. A lot of people do actually find it more disturbing than Fred's because of how matter of fact it is. The narrator is brilliant, but he's just so out of pocket at some points. He just says things and you're like, what the fuck? There's this bit where he's talking about this couple that live in London, and he goes through, like, basically saying that they did all the rigmarole of putting the doors up against the walls, and he goes, they'll probably survive, and he goes, for about 17 seconds, and then they'd blow up. And that was so out of pocket. I'll put the clip of it here because it was just like, it made me laugh, but I felt bad for laughing because of obviously the subject matter. But it's just, there's a really good comment that somebody made on the video, and I'll put that here because it just kind of explains why it's quite funny.
Eric should survive, at least for 17 seconds.
A lot of the documentary is mostly them just talking about fallout shelters and the likelihood that you're going to survive. It goes through a lot of different fallout shelters, from the least expensive to the most expensive. and the locations and stuff like that. And then they did a kind of like a social experiment, because it's not in public, but just an experiment, where a real couple made their own fallout shelter and stayed in it for 2 weeks. It didn't look very real to me. I feel like they probably didn't stay in it for 2 weeks, but I don't really care. The message is still the same. So now I'm going to talk about the popular one, the most well-known one, Threads. So yeah, this is again one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. They showed this on the telly, and apparently that night was coined the night that Britain couldn't sleep. Because it's just so fucked up and so disturbing. I never want to see it again. I genuinely don't know how people could have ever watched this and not wanted to throw themselves out the window, because I did. I watched it before all the Russia and Ukraine shit started kicking off again, and I was still horrified then. And then I watched it again recently, and I was even more horrified than I was the first time. So yeah, it's just horrific. I won't go into too much detail about it because I've already spoke about it in another video about the most disturbing British films. If that's something that would interest you, please watch it. But obviously the film follows a young couple who are getting married, gonna have a baby, and throughout the first half you can just kind of hear, you know, like things on the radio, and it's gradually getting more and more like scary and more kind of closer to what's gonna happen, and everyone's just kind of getting on with their lives. No one's really worrying that much, you know, they're just getting on with it. And then the bomb hits, and that is single-handedly the most disturbing scene in cinematic history. I genuinely believe that nothing could top that. Nothing. That's a lie. There is a few things that I know that can top that. A few things I spoke about in my other video, which you can watch if you want to. So obviously the bomb goes off, and I'll put 2 clips from this scene which I find really disturbing. The first clip isn't disturbing, it's just the way the man looks at the nuke. That kind of hits me like a ton of bricks.
Jesus Christ, they've done it. They've done it. Michael! Michael!
So then the rest of the film is the people that survive just plodding along, just living in this barren nuclear wasteland, and it's fucked up. It's really bad. It is horrendous, and I hate it. And it's just seeing them like try and scrape together remnants of society that they can pick up. It just gives me existential crisis. There's a scene where they're teaching kids in a school, and I just think that's the most pointless thing, but obviously they've got to keep the kids' minds going and working and stuff. But it's just knowing that people go to school to get qualifications and to get an education, whereas these kids, they're just going just to watch videos and learn through tapes and things that ain't gonna matter to them when all of the shit is crumbling around them. very existential, and I don't like thinking about it. Yet I'm here thinking about it and talking about it. It's so disturbing. And I'll put the clip here because this is one of my favourite scenes, even though it's one of the most disturbing in my opinion, because it's just, as I said, the existentialness of it. Like, you're kind of thinking like, oh shit, this is messed up.
There was the skeleton of a cat. A cat's skeleton. The skeleton of a chicken. A chicken's skeleton. The skeleton of a bird.
I won't talk about the plotline with the main woman's daughter because it's not really relevant in what I'm talking about today. But obviously, again, in my other video I do talk about that. I'm sorry, I'll stop promoting it now. The people's reactions to all of this stuff was obviously, oh shit. It was obviously like, okay, we're worried now. And it obviously made a few people probably go a bit crazy. But the majority of the British public just, you know, stereotypical British, stiff upper lip, get on with your day, have a cup of tea, pack it in, you know. That's just, yeah. And I think it's really like the whole like ignorance is bliss thing as well is what a lot of people was doing. And I think the thing of ignorance is bliss is represented really well in When the Wind Blows. I think that is a really good representation of just the British public in general. Like the whole film, this old couple are just plodding along in denial. Obviously, When the Wind Blows is that animated film by Raymond Briggs about a nuclear bomb that hits, and it kind of surrounds this old couple and their lives and how they get on with it. But and the whole time they're just kind of in denial. Ignorance is bliss. They don't acknowledge the fact that they're probably going to die. They don't really know, but you kind of think like you do know. You just don't. You just want to stay positive and optimistic. And there's a scene that I'll add in here which I think sums it up pretty well.
My gums are bleeding. I thought there was a funny taste.
Well, shrinking of gums causing ill-fitting dentures. That's what that is. Yeah. Better get to the dentist when the emergency has rescinded.
Just the fact that, you know, go to the dentist once this is all over, as if it will ever be over. Luckily, we ignored it and it went away, but it might not have gone that way for us. We might have been ignoring it and it didn't go away, and we wouldn't have been prepared. So, you know, but yeah, the When the Wind Blows is another really, really disturbing one, which I don't think I'm ever gonna watch again. That one hit me harder, I think, because it's just so cute. They're just so cute, these two little old people. And I'm just like, I know what's going to happen to you, and I don't want it to happen to you. But, yeah, people just kind of reacted as you know, British as they could. Very sorry for the lighting change. My ring light just broke at the plug, so you're going to have to make do with this. There's only a few minutes left, so don't worry. I feel like if I was around then, I would definitely have probably gone insane. I feel like all of this stuff on the telly 24/7 would have literally drove me up the walls. I feel like I would have just gone mental. I genuinely believe that with my entire heart. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I actually do want to thank my Uncle Joe for helping me out a lot with this video. He sent me some documentaries to watch, which has really helped me with my research, and also pretty much informed me on everything I need to know about the Cold War, because I had no idea where it was and I just didn't understand. He's got his own channel, which I will link in the description. He makes videos about British sci-fi, like series and films and stuff. I'm not too well versed on sci-fi, but his videos are really, really good. And if that's something you'd be interested in, then definitely go and check it out. And I also want to thank my granddad Mark as well, because he gave me a lot of information about, you know, what the British public were doing back then. As I said, he was part of the CND, and yeah. But again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and a subscribe and all of that jazz. So thank you very much. I'll see you later.